Probably some of you would probably will go to in engineering courses, maybe. So you need this developmental research because you have to come up with an invention once you already studying probably engineering, something like that, about electricity, about civil works, about any inventions that you would like to discover in the future once you're already in college. So it is very important that you should know the parts. Actually, guys, in other universities, these project these project description, project structures, these parts are actually can be found in your chapter 3. However, in LSPU, you have to present all of these parts in your chapter 4. In our case, in Canossa College, I suggested that you should put this in your chapter 3 so that you may explain further only the project evaluation and the project test results only in your chapter 4. However, take note of this. However, although the most of this can be found in your chapter 3, just like the project description, project structure, project development, the production schedule, the marketing strategies and resources, you need to expound or explain this further in your chapter 4 before presenting. Take note of this. Before presenting your project test results and the project evaluation. So last night, someone asked me, Miss, can we change something in our evaluation? Can we add something about resources or management resources? Why I did not encourage them to include that as part of evaluation? Because you cannot measure resources. You can only explain as part of the result, the project test result, that the resources or the materials that you use are not applicable. Based on the test results, that the functionality is not that perfect. The aesthetic value is is lacking, probably because of the resources or probably the materials that you used. You have to explain that there is something probably better materials to use to improve the functionality, the aesthetic, probably the workability, probably the durability, or probably the marketability, the resources or the materials that you used, and what are the different parts of resources that you may use in conducting or formulating your prototype. Probably the man is part of a resource. Why? Who will do your prototype? Probably you need somebody experts in assembling this kind of prototype that you are going to present. So you need to pay them. How much it's cost? How much is the labor? So that is part of the resource or resources. Okay? Another part of resources are the examples, the materials that you use. Okay? Isa yan. The strategies is also part of your resources to probably the time frame. Instead of using or probably 3 months to assemble your prototype, you were able to only use 1 week to come up with your prototype. So instead of paying 3 months for the labor cost, so nabawasan yung labor cost nyo. Naging ano na lang, 3 weeks, or 1 week, or 3 days maybe. So that is part of resources management. So question, so I do hope nandito ang group 3 Kasi they keep on insisting me to include resources as part of their evaluation. You may include that in your project test result and explain that probably you may change based on the trials under project test results. You may have 3, 4, 5 trials using these resources that you have, and you found out that there is a better material to be used to improve the functionality or probably the aesthetic value of your prototype. I do hope you understand that. All right. Now, I explained a while ago that in the results and discussions using the technological research or developmental research, by the way, there are different types of developmental research. It may be clinical or invention. When we say clinical, uh, developmental when it comes to the faculty of the human brain. You may say clinical, yung another developmental like yung mga nababaliw. Ayan, developmental research din yan. So probably you may use qualitative. However, we use developmental research in a form of inventing product. Okay? Production tayo ha, hindi clinical. Not we're not going to do clinical, okay? So we're just focused on the developmental research wherein you have to present a product or a prototype. All right? Now you're going to it, describe the project. So, Miss, I already present that in my chapter 3. I know. But you have to get the summary of that in the results and discussions. What is your project about? You have to explain the aims, you have to explain how to do it, or probably the use of that kind of prototype. Okay, in general. So you only have to explain, you describe your prototype in summarize the project description, the project structure, the project development, the probably you may or may not include the production schedule, or probably there's a problem along the way while assembling or formulating your ideas or probably your prototype itself. You discuss that there was a problem happened along the way na probably because of uh, resources management, meaning you have no money, so naghanap pa kayo ng pera just to buy it, or another kind of management resources. Probably there is no material available. So tumagal yung inyong, what is this? The assembling process, yung time na nilagay ninyo sa chapter 3 ay hindi nasunod. It is because of the management resources na ang tagal dumating yung materials, for instance. Another thing is, naghanap pa kayo ng expert para makabuo ng ganong klaseng prototype. So matagal. Another thing is marketing strategies. So based on the result when it comes to marketing, kung nilagay ninyo dyan ay marketability, be sure that you already have the part of your survey questionnaire na mayroong nakalagay na marketability value. Mura ba? Ilagay mo, describe mo yung resources na ginamit mo. Mura ba? Mahal ba? The prices, affordable ba pag binenta nyo yung prototype? So you may include that as in a form of narrative. You explain that probably in a one page analysis in your chapter 4. Another part is what we call the project test results. So, what is project test results? Ito na yung testing. You Probably you already have the observations and assessment done by you, hindi ng evaluator. Magkaiba yun ha. Yung trials and revisions while assembling your prototype. So example, ang group 1 ay nag-conduct ng, for instance, ng kanilang revisions. You have to explain that in this part, trials and revisions, in a form of a table or figure. Okay? So I will explain later on how to do the tables and figures. By the way, did I discuss the objectives for the day? So I forgot. Nalimutan ko yata. So for today's objectives, we're going to discuss chapter 4, of course, that we are doing right now already. I'm going to explain the different parts of your thesis included in chapter 4. And then I'm going to demonstrate on how to encode data in table, present the gathered data through tables and graphs. We're going to do that later on as we continue our discussion. So allow me to go back to my presentation. Now, testing. So under trials and revisions, you may do testing, observations, and assessments done. I have here samples of revisions. Let me check this. Tinan ko lang to ha. Allow me to open it. This is just sample. Oops. Why is not? Okay, examples of trials and revisions. Ito yon, naka-table. So, anong mali dito? Wala siyang nakalagay na table. Dapat may table number yan. Table number and the title of this table. So, probably this will be your table 2 or table 3. And then you may put there trials and revisions of what's the prototype. You write the prototype. And then, for instance, for the activities or descriptions, you may put their descriptions. Ano yung ginawa ninyo? When it comes to designing and layouting, trial 1, anong nangyari? Trial 2, trial 3, what's the remarks? Okay, probably sa trial 1, hindi siya umubra. Anong ilalagay nyo dito? Failed. Ay miss, baka po kami bumagsak pag nilagay po namin failed. It's okay, kasi yun yung nangyari. What is important is, doon sa last trial nyo, na-achieve nyo yung goal ninyo. Or, you may just put there, passed. Kagaya nito, trial 1, not yet achieve. Yung pagme-measure, mali. Okay? So, it's up to you. Anong trial ba yung ginawa ninyo? Like, for instance, yung isang project ay, what is this? Bricks. Binagsak ninyo. Ano yung height? Trial 1. Height, halimbawa ay probably 2 feet, 3 feet, 6 feet height. Tapos binagsak ninyo. Anong nangyari doon? Maglagay kayo dito ng descriptions. Ano yung ginawa ninyo sa first trial ay anong height? Dropping of, ilagay nyo dyan, dropping of bricks. So, doon sa paglayo, siyempre paglayo, how can I say it in Filipino? The higher the materials is, when you drop it, ano mangyayari? Siyempre, mas mababasag siya. So, you have to explain that kung yun ay bricks. Okay? So, explain nyo yan. However, kung kayo naman ay electricity, gaano yung kanyang bilis o na-stored na energy, for instance, for the first trial, second trial, and the third trial. Okay? And explain that. For instance, ito ay table 5 niya. So, dapat dito, table 5, trial and revisions of the blank. What kind of prototype? And then, ito yung explanation niya. Ayan. You have to explain what is this about and how were you able to achieve it. Okay? And then, kung meron kang revisions, you explain also the revisions. Ilagay mo rin dito, revisions done. Hindi siya nakalagay sa inyong chapter 3. When it comes to especially specific materials. So you have to explain that the revisions done change the part of the prototype or the materials that you use. Instead of plastic, you use metal, for instance. And what is the result? Were you able to achieve the goal? Yung objective ninyo to improve the functionality. So you may include that also as part of your recommendation at the end of your study in your chapter 5. Okay? So ganun lang siya kadali. Now, how are you going to do it when it comes to, let me open this one again. Where is my, so that is your trials and revisions. Another one is the project evaluation. Now, this is now the results of your survey. Ngayon, Miss, nag-conduct po ako ng survey questionnaire. Now, this will be part of your results and discussions. So, present in tables and or graphs with interpretations of data. Okay, I have here an example. So, as you can see, ito yung kanyang criteria. The motorized jack craft can lift a vehicle or car. Ano yung weighted mean niya? Ito yun. So, ito ay 5-point scale. So, ito ay, bakit ito po yung kanyang tinatawag nating interval? So, how are you going to do that? So, bakit siya naging 0.80? 1.80. So, if you're going to compute that, using example, listen na kung paano i-compute. So, kung yan ay 5-point scale, 5 minus 1, kasi nandun ka sa 1, ayan, is 4 divided by 5. So, ang i-add ninyo ay 0.80. So, 1 ang interval, tapos hanggang saan? Ang strongly disagree. So, 1 plus 0.80, what is the answer? What is the answer? Anyone? 1 plus 0.80, guys. What's the answer? May sasagot ba? Are you still with me? Are you listening? Anyone? Okay, Bianca.
Miss.
Yes, anak. What's the answer?
2.80 po.
Are you sure? 1 plus 0.80.
Miss, 1.80 po.
1.80. So, ayan, 1.80. So, doon naman tayo sa pangalawa. 1.80, 1.80 plus 0.80. What is the answer?
2.60 po.
2.60. Ayan. So, ang ilalagay nyo dito, 1.81 kasi dapat mag-a-add ka, di ba? Ganun ang interval. So, kung ito ay 1.80, sa taas ay 1.81 hanggang 2.60 ang disagree. Now, ito ay 5-point scales. Gagawin naman natin ng 4-point scales. Lahat kayo ay gagamit ng 4-point scales. Alright? So, ano yung 4-point scale? 4, balik tayo sa 1. Ito ha, balik tayo sa 1. 4 minus 1. Anong sagot? Get your calculator or cell phone. 4 minus 1, what is the answer?
3 po.
3 po.
3. Ngayon, i-divide mo siya sa 4-point scale. 3 divided by 4 is? What's the answer?
0.75 po.
Yan. So, ang magiging sagot nyo dito ay 1, 0, 0. Why I could not type? Wait. Sandali guys ha. So, dito na lang ako. So, magiging result nyo dyan sa inyong Likert scale, 1.00 to 1.75. Nakuha po? Ngayon, anong ilalagay nyo sa taas dito? Magiging 1.70 higher than 1.75. Add 0.1. What is it? What's the answer? What's the answer, anak? 1.
76 po.
Okay, 1.76. Ngayon, ang sagot nyo kanina is 1.75 plus 0.75. What is the answer? Kasi maraming mali dito. Nung chinek ko guys ang inyong chapter 3, maraming nagkamali dito sa interval. What is the answer?
2.5 po.
Ayan. So, the answer is 2.50. Ngayon, anong ilalagay nyo dun sa pangatlo? 2 point? Third line. What is the answer? 2.50?
1.
2.51. Well done. So, ngayon, 2.51 plus, ano yung kanina? 0.75. What is the answer? What's the answer, guys? Get your calcu. Come on.
3.25.
Are you sure? 2.51 plus 2.51 plus 0.75. Paki-check. What's the answer?
3.26.
Ayun, 3.26. And then sa taas, anong ilalagay natin? 3.27. So, kung yan ay 3.20, parang may mali.
Is yung ano po, 1.76 plus 0.75 po ay 2.51.
2.51, yeah. Wait. Hindi mo anak ipa-plus ang 1.76. 1.75 plus 75. Tapos ito, 250 plus 75. So, 326. Nakuha? Nakuha, anak? So, ito ay 326 plus 0.75. Parang may mali dito sa compute na to. Wait. So, 1.75 plus 0.75 is 2.5. And then 2.5 plus 0.75 is 3.25. Yeah. Tama pala si ano. Sorry guys. Kaya pala hindi magtali ng 4. My fault. Sorry. And then 3.25 plus 0.75 is, what's the answer? What's the answer? 4. Kaya siya anak ay 4-point scales. Ngayon, ilagay nyo na yung descriptive value or interpretations. So, halimbawa, anong nilagay dito? Ni strongly agree ba? Let me check. So, tanggalin natin yung undecided. So, we have strongly agree, strongly agree. Ano pa yung next? Strongly agree, agree, slightly agree, and disagree. And disagree. So, yan yung inyong verbal interpretations. For instance, Kung pwede nyo namang ilagay na disagree and strongly disagree. Kaya lang, medyo bababa ang result ng inyong study. So, I suggest that you may use this instead. So, ito po ang tawag dito ay agreement. Ang tawag dito ay what? This is agreement that you agree or disagree. Now, if you want to measure the level of or how acceptable your product is, hindi lang yan ang inyong i-interpret. It is not just only that they strongly agree or disagree. You have to encode another verbal interpretations in your chapter 4. Ito lang ang ipapakita ninyo sa inyong respondents. Yan lang ang ilalagay ninyo sa inyong survey questionnaire. However, when the time that you need to explain that in your chapter 4 as the results, you have to come up with another verbal interpretation. So what is strongly agree? Probably kapag nag-strongly agree sila, the results to measure your product na lahat sila ay strongly agree between 3.26 to 4. Majority of your respondents strongly agree that your product is acceptable. So therefore, ang ilalagay nyo dyan pag strongly agree is highly acceptable. Yun yung tinatanong, yun yung sinasabi ko kanina na you cannot measure resources. Okay? In here, you can measure it. You can measure probably the functionality. Halimbawa, ito ay Likert scale ng functionality of the product. I do hope you understand, ha? Huwag kayong malilito. So, I really appreciated the efforts of Group 8. To be honest with you, sila lang yung nakitaan ko na talagang kahit gabi, kahit 11 o'clock ay nagme-message sa akin at nagtatanong. And they got a very good grades when it comes to their, binigay sa kanila ng kanyang isa sa mga panel members. Kasi they're really trying their best na maayos yung kanilang manuscript. So that's it. I do hope, guys, that you will find time to ask questions, to seek help. You cannot just depend on your own na okay na to. But to be able for you to improve your manuscript, you have to ask. Okay? Pwedeng magtanong, kumbaga, no? Huwag kayong mahihiya. Okay? So here, anong sunod dito sa agree? Kung yan ay highly acceptable, so probably yung agree ay very acceptable. Wait. So kahit hindi na lang pantay ha, very acceptable. And then, pag sinabing slightly agree, ano yung slightly agree? Ano pa? Parang hindi naman very acceptable, not acceptable eh. How can you think of another verbal interpretation for that? Highly acceptable, very acceptable. So probably this is acceptable only. Is that okay? Tama po ba? What do you think? Is it acceptable or not? Answer. Anyone would like to answer? Yes, it is acceptable because of the word agree. Acceptable. And then, what do you think is the another verbal interpretation for disagree? Anyone who would like to answer? What is another verbal interpretation for disagree?
Is not acceptable po.
Alrighty, well done. So the answer is not acceptable. So yan po ang interpretation niyan. So how can you, or how are you going to do it in a form of table? Ito po ay yung inyong scales. So ang tawag dyan ay Likert Likert, yung mga Filipino, ang tawag ay Likert. So, yan po ay Likert scale. Okay? Or, another thing, yan po ay tinatawag nating legend. So, yan ang ilalagay ninyo sa inyong table sa baba. Ito po ay single space ha. Wala akong makikitang double space. So, be sure yung after, it's always 0. And then the line should be single. So, and then, ito po ay mas maliit sa table. You can do it at probably 9. And then, Times New Roman 9. Now, how are you going to come up with a table? So, let me explain it. Wait. Gawa muna tayo ng table. So, insert table. Where is insert? Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. Gagawa kayo ng 3. 1 for the description. So, probably, lagay nyo dyan ang inyong description. And then, ito yung mean. SD. In-explain ko na to last time, di ba? Kung paano nyo kukumputin yung mean at saka SD. So, dyan nyo ilalagay yung kanyang pinakasagot. And then, ito po yung VI or the verbal interpretation. So, lagay nyo yan sa gitna. Alright. So, naka-bold yan. And then, ito, mas maliit po ang SD. Allow me to put this in the middle. Okay. So, ayan. So, ano yun? Yung tanong ninyo, balik tayo doon. So, mayroon kayong inilagay dito sa functionality. Let's say, this is table. Point 1, functionality of the product. Example. So, ayan po. Ito po ay single space. Dapat yan ay magkatabi. 0, and then single space. And then ito ay nasa baba niyan. Now, example, ito yung description niya. Example ay, when it comes to functionality, can you think of a description about functionality? Okay, lagay na lang muna natin ng 1, 2, 3 description of the functionality. And then the mean, for instance, is 3.5. And then 3.5. And then 4. Okay? So, dapat yan ay 2 decimals places. So, one more. So, laging 2 decimals ha. Palagay na lang po yan sa center. And then, what is the SD? Tingnan nyo ulit yung ginawa nyong formula. Balikan nyo yung data matrix ninyo. Pretend that the SD is usually 0.60, 0.5, 0.50. Hindi ganito ang pagkukompute ha. Tinuro ko na yan last time. 0.40, 0.20. So, the lesser the number, the closer the responses. Okay? Kung mas malapit siya sa 1, ibig sabihin, mas dikit-dikit ang sagot ng mga respondents. Example, look for the mean. What is 3.25? Nasaan yung 3.25? Ito, di ba? Tama? What is the verbal interpretation for 3.25? 3.25 is very, what's the answer? Anyone? What's the answer?
Very acceptable.
Well done. So, itatype nyo po dyan, very acceptable. What about 3.5? What is the verbal interpretation for 3.5?
Is highly acceptable.
Well done. So, ilagay mo dyan is highly acceptable. Next, what is the verbal interpretation for 4? Dali na po, sagot na nang tayo ay hindi maabala.
Is highly acceptable.
Well done. So, highly acceptable. Alrighty. So, we have 2 highly and 1 very acceptable. So, ano dapat ang general? Ano ang general dyan? Interpretation. If you're gonna add this very plus high, what is the answer? Divided by 3. What is the answer? If very is 1 and highly is 2 and you have to add them divided by 3, what is the result? What's the answer? Okay, let us pretend that the very is 1 point. Highly is 2 points. So if you're gonna add this 1 plus 2 plus 2, what's the answer? What is the answer? Anyone? Sagot na anak. 1
Is
plus
5.
2, 5.
po.
Okay. So 5 divided by 3 kasi tatlo yan. What is the answer? $1.6. So you have to regroup it. So 1.6 is equal to 2. What is 2? This is 1, this is 2. So therefore, what is the overall? If it is 2,
Is highly.
highly. So ang ilalagay nyo dyan ay highly acceptable. If you don't want to compute, tingnan nyo na lang kung ano ang mas marami. Simple as that, okay? Pero that's how we compute the verbal interpretation. You have to look for a specific, maglalagay kayo ng coding. Kung ang very ay 1 at ito ay 2, at 2, i-add nyo yan lahat, i-divide nyo kung ilan yan. So, yun yung magiging sagot. Kung ang 2 ay, kung ang sagot dyan ay 1, lahat yan very, very, very. So, 1 plus 1 plus 1 divided by 3 is 1. So, ang sagot dito ay very acceptable. Nakuha po. Now, in your interpretation, how are you going to explain that? So, probably you will just say, Table 1 presents. Okay. Magtataka kayo, Miss, bakit po siya present tense? Ang interpretation po is always in the present tense. Hindi po tayo maglalagay ng table 1 presented that. The data is always new, is always fresh. So, ilalagay nyo po dyan, table 1 presents the, ano ang title? What's the title of our table? Answer na, anak. What is the title of our table?
Functionality of the product.
Well done. Ayan. So, table 1 presents the functionality of the product or prototype. Okay. It has. Okay, next. So, ito po ay double space na. Double space times New Roman 12. And then double space. Be sure naka-0. And then double space. So, ang ilalagay nyo po dito, so, it has, bahala kayo kung anong gusto nyong explanation. It has an overall mean score of So halimbawa, ang overall mean nito ay 3.75. For instance lang ha. At ito naman, base do sa computation nyo, ay 0.60. For instance lang din. Or 0.50 maybe. Ayan. It has an overall score or mean score of 3.75 with the standard deviation of of 0.50, which is, or it's up to which is interpreted, or with, lagay nyo naman, ilagay dito ay with a verbal interpretation of highly acceptable. Okay? Which means that the prototype is what? Isip kayo ng anong magandang description. It means that the prototype is blank, that the respondents highly recommended the product. It's up to you. According to, example, mayroon kayong nilagay sa inyong chapter 2. Ang pangalan ay Montoya. Okay, Montoya 2019 narrated or stated that, anong pangalan ng prototype nyo? Example, that BrickGo, for instance, BrickGo is very effective when mixed with sands. For instance, base lang ito yung example lang ha. Mag-create kayo ng sarili ninyo. Hindi kayo pwedeng manghula. Magbe-base kayo dito sa results. Okay? So, additional, another. Nalagay nyo naman. However, sino pa? Titong 2020 negate, teka lang. Okay, pwede ring reaffirm. Bakit past tense? Kasi nasabi na nato matagal na. Ano lang ang ipe-present tense ninyo? The data result. Okay? So, ito po ay dapat naka-justify. Reaffirm that BrickGo is blah, blah, and blah. That's how we interpret the results. Nakuha po? Okay, now be sure na tama yung inyong table na ginawa. Saan nyo kukunin yan? It should be based from the data matrix that you already have. So, yun yung pinag-gatheran ninyo ng inyong survey questionnaire. Take note, magkaiba po ang survey results saan? Sa project test results. So, take note ha, ang developmental research ay mayroong trials and revisions.